Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Order of business is approval of the minutes. We had 2 draft minutes to look at. Were there any corrections or additions for the November 14th draft minutes? That was the ones that were not attached last month. Hearing none, is it?
No, I would move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Ditto for the minutes for the December 12th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? We have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have no public appearances today. So we'll move on to the agenda items, which is the 2025 initiatives.
Okay. All right. So last month, if you remember, I remember Janice had talked about, let's look at, what are some of the trends coming down the pike for senior centers? And I love that question because I'm always looking because I'm kind of competitive naturally. So I like to see what others are doing and make sure that we're kind of ahead of that even. So I appreciate that question. So today, that's what I want to talk about with this group. And I put together some slides that I want to share with you to kind of have you thinking. And then Janice, not thinking you weren't going to be here, I did a handout called The State of Today's Senior Centers, which was done by the National Council on Aging. So I will email it to you right after this. But some of the information that I'm sharing, I got from this document put out last year.
That's fine. Okay.
So moving forward, I wanted to start. Jeremy, if this doesn't work out, here we go. I wanted to start with what's our mission and what's our purpose. Our purpose, our dream, could be our mission, our vision. Thanks to a Plan for Growth committee about 5 years ago, we redid our mission statement and then we added our vision statement, which I think will speak well to what we're looking at in trends down the future. So as you can see, our mission or our purpose is to advance healthy aging and vibrant to vulnerable populations through diverse social, recreational, and volunteer opportunities and supportive services. It's always a mouthful because we want to encompass everything. And a lot of senior centers outside of Dane County don't do services like case management. So we want to make sure that that's a piece of it. I love our vision statement, our dream. The senior center vision is to become a recognized leader in building connections and opportunities to reimagine aging and empower individuals to be their best selves. I still just love that. I think the reimagining aging is something we'll see in these trends that we're going to talk about. So that was our marketing brochure, if you guys aren't familiar with it, so I just wanted to share. That was the inside and outside cover. I won't go into detail about here, except for the round circles. Those are the pillars of wellness that when we look at some of the programs that we're offering, we want to make sure that we're touching all of these. And it also helps us know, we're pretty heavy on physical fitness. Brain fitness is something that I want to do more of. And so just kind of looking at that to give us a guide to make sure that we are continuing to meet all of these needs. Before we move forward, I wanted to look back a little bit, and it's been kind of interesting. I mean, not that I know all this, but I do know some of it. So in '79, that's when a group of older adults began meeting, actually about 5 years before that, at Old Town Hall up the road at City Hall, where it used to be, where now it's the maintenance facility, the public works facility.
Oh, that used to be City Hall?
Yeah, well, they tore down the old building, but they still have the part of it, and then, so that's where they started meeting. And they congregated, and they did potlucks, and they did a lot of things that we do still, like bingo and crafts and fun parties and stuff. So, you know, they decided that they felt like we needed somebody to really run the show. They hired a director. They did fundraising to cover that, and the town of Fitchburg contributed some monies towards that. There's a lot of background about the senior center wasn't a city department. They weren't a focal point of services. So Oregon Senior Center was. So Oregon actually supplied meals to the city town hall. They did home delivered meals first, and they would serve Fitchburg residents that were in the Oregon school district. So that's all they covered. So we didn't run a program.
Was Fitchburg even a city then?
No, it was still a town. I can't remember where it became a city, but it was before
The 80s.
86, yeah. So anyway, we were receiving some meals through the town of Oregon, as well as a part-time outreach worker who, again, would only serve older adults that were in the Oregon school district. But back then it was very rural, and there wasn't anything up here. So in 86 is when the senior center became a city department, which was pretty exciting. During that time, the group that was running the senior center still met, still had a lot of input. They called themselves a committee on aging. But when the senior center became a department and we got the commission on aging, there was tons of questions about, are you a commission on aging? Are you a committee on aging? So the committee on aging actually, which is the nonprofit arm of the Friends, they changed their name to Senior Advisory Council. And then they changed it again to Fitchburg Senior Center Friends. So
they wouldn't be so confusing?
Correct, right. So they've been around, this nonprofit group has been around before the city. Fast forward to 1988, this group, this strong advocacy group, went to the town board and said, we need our own building. They didn't want to meet up at Old City Hall anymore, they needed more space. And so the plans to build a freestanding senior community center started around 86, and then they opened the doors in 88. Fast forward, 2012 is when we did the remodel and the addition, seeing that we needed a lot more space. We were serving a lot more people. And then in 2023 is when we added the patio on there. So that's kind of where we've come from.
Jill, when did you come on board?
I came on board in 1993. So not the, you know.
That's when I moved to Madison.
Yeah, so this was our original building. That was the front entrance that you see on the left there. And it really just kind of put you into a hallway. We didn't have a reception area, and you could walk down, and then there was the dining room. So there was the front entrance over there. At that point, they did have a director on staff at .75. They had a 0.75 outreach worker, and then a very short amount of time for a nutrition site manager because they were only doing meals still through Oregon. The money was funding through Oregon, but I think we were doing them maybe 3 days a week. There's a whole timeline I have on this too. So now fast forward to 2012, we did the addition and remodel. We got this beautiful covered drop-off area, and I will say the Friends, which way back then was Senior Advisory, were super instrumental again in making sure this addition happened. We spent about 5 years from start to finish looking at other senior centers. We did our own internal surveys. We did a lot of things on our own to really determine what kind of space do we need, what does that space need to look like. So that's pretty exciting. And then the patio last year, or 2023. So fast forward to today, full-time director, full-time assistant director, full-time nutrition site manager / volunteer, full-time office assistant. 2 full-time caseworkers, 1 part-time, which is shared with the police, and then right now, LTE nutrition site assistant. So we've come a long way. I pulled out some census data because oh, go ahead, Janice.
No. I was sneezing. I'm sorry.
Bless you.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to pull out some census data because I was like, where are we at now? So 2000 was a good, place to start because that's about 25 years ago. From that census data, 60 years and older, we only had 1,368 older adults. Wow. At least that filled out the census, but it was very different way back then. So let's fast forward now to the 2020 census. 60 years and older, it was 5,700. Now, this was 5 years ago. So if you look at the 50 to 59 category, they identified almost 1,900 older adults that were 55 to 59, which all of those now have dumped into the 60 and over category. So go ahead and add another 2,000 on that 5,700. That's a lot of older adults, 60 and over. Are we serving them all? No. Can we do career? Yeah. So that's kind of why we're here today. We haven't done our annual report for 2024, but I know, in my whole scheme and everything that's in my head, I think we're touching about 2,500 different older adults this year. And I'll know better by the end of February. It's hard to track because we have a separate case management database that we connect with Dane County. We have an access database that we developed years ago, and then we're starting to do online registrations through Google Forms. Mm-hmm. So we now have that database. So finding an unduplicated number is really hard.
So if someone just comes in for fitness on Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
yep,
they're not signing anything when they come in.
Right, they are registering online though.
Okay.
And I would say 60% of our programs are registered online,
okay, so
but lots are drop-ins.
Well, that's what I was wondering, how they get
right.
counted.
Right, so it's hard, but I will say with the facility site, the counter that we have, that's where we're gonna capture some of that stuff. And so I'm
sorry,
excited
I don't
about
understand.
that. The facility site is the people counter that we installed, I think it was in November, maybe late October, and we were just learning. So it's counting everybody that's coming through the doors up here and downstairs. And we're able to parse out the reports that show us 8 to 4, okay, since we don't have a lot of programs after. I will say that I was able to pull a report for December because that's really the first month that it was complete. And we averaged 209 people every day coming through the doors of the senior center, which is exactly what I was predicting. I would say to council or, my administrator, I think we serve about 200 to 250 every single day because you just know. We know who's coming through the doors. We know who signs up. So 1,000 people, not all unduplicated because same person's coming Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
How do you weed out the people like in December who come in to pay their property taxes?
We don't do, I'm sorry, we only do community center entrances.
Okay.
And a lot of people, yeah, they will come in right here. Okay. And also too, if we see a spike in a day.
Like election day? Activity. Yeah.
What's that?
Election day, you would
right,
have a
right.
major
So I didn't
spike.
pull November's numbers because they were so wonky. But there was a day that we had 350, 60 people that came in. So I went back in my calendar. Well, we had the city employee luncheon in the Oak Hall room. Mm-hmm. So I was able to take about 100 people out of that count.
Just because
Right. So it's kind of interesting that you can query out things to really help. So the facility counter is going to be very helpful capturing traffic. Mm-hmm. Does everybody come to the front desk? No, but do a lot of people come to the front desk? Yeah. They do, to pay, to register, to ask questions, whatever. So kind of now moving forward to some of the research I did. And again, I took some of this stuff, Janice, I'll give you a copy, from the State of Today's Senior Center. So we are a member of the National Council on Aging. And it's, it's interesting to kind of see what they've been doing. But in 2023, they did this modernization of Senior Center's Resource Center. And so some of this stuff is coming from here. So This is very true. If you've seen one senior center, you've seen one senior center. And we've known that all along, even in the state of Wisconsin. Every center is so different because, first of all, where centers are they rural, are they urban? Their programs and services are driven by need, and then how they're funded. They're either municipal funded, they're county funded, they're nonprofits, they're partnerships with health facilities. Like, it's so interesting to see how different centers are run. A lot of them fall under the rec department. So it's just a variety. But anyway, some of the models, as I talked about, some are multi-generational, some just focus on certain populations, some do more of a focus on arts and health and wellness. So it's all over the place, which always leads me back to, we just have to figure out what we need at our center for our older adults in Fitchburg. I thought that this was an interesting graph. I'm going to move these guys over. This was from, it's called NISC. There's so many acronyms. It's called NISC. It's the National Institute of Senior Centers. But they were talking about the generations that we've served over the years and kind of where we're at now. And sorry, some of that I can't seem to move the folks out of there. But, the greatest generation, we're pretty much at the tail end of that. 1901 to 1924. I think we have a few older adults that are, definitely in their high 90s, but not obviously who we're serving primarily. The silent generation, 25 to 45, that's probably more the population we're seeing, although it's getting younger. But you can see what they'd experienced is kind of what it translates, what's important to them, the meals, organized club, free classes. When I look back at the greatest generation, the potlucks, the games, all of the old minutes, I look at City Hall, that's all that they did up there. It's kind of interesting. But now this is what we're experiencing is the baby boomers, and sorry, I can't move that. But they were born from 46 to 64. The largest cohort in the US ever, best educated, most affluent, and the healthiest. They value choice, quality, making a difference. Experiences include the Vietnam War, beatniks, Woodstock, and civil rights. They know about television, video, dawn of personal computers. And what does that translate for us and how we want to program moving forward? High quality programs, short-term focused commitments. We know that with our volunteers. Demonstrated impact. People want their programs to make a difference, and they want lots of choices. And so I don't think anything about this is very surprising, but it's nice to see on paper. Okay, trends. These are some of the trends. I took some of these from the National Institute of Senior Centers and also from just some of the research of just Googling senior centers across the country. Focus on equity, inclusion and equity. Obviously that's a big push right now all across the board, not just in senior centers. So we're seeing that increase in digital marketing. Senior centers trying to market in different ways using different social media platforms. Expanding access to technology. That's a big push. We learned that more because of COVID. I don't think we ever would have been doing virtual programs like we learned, if it wasn't for COVID. We don't do as much as we probably could. Do we try to bring folks in, or do we offer virtual so they can stay home? But, I'll talk a little bit about that later. Access to equipment, to internet, the cost, the affordability. Bridging the gap between generations. We're doing that now, just like other senior centers. How do we serve everybody and meet those needs from the older adults to these upcoming younger older adults? Offering a variety of dining options, which that's been an issue for years and years. Again, some of the flexibility of offering dining options comes from maybe you're your own nonprofit, maybe you have a commercial kitchen so you can cook on site, and so it's something I want to explore with our center. We fall under a county contract, so there are limitations of what we can do, but I think that we can look at different options. And then incorporating more social service programs. You're seeing other centers doing that. One center out of, is California. They're called the Senior Enrichment Center, but they're very large, but they just have a whole department under their center for mental health and wellness. They were able to hire a mental health professional, and again, we did that at the county level. We're very connected with the county, but there is a mental health professional for older adults at the county level, but you got wait lists of, 4, 6, 8 weeks. It's just not enough to go around. Some of the other research I did, I was, the senior centers in Milwaukee they're run by the county. And so there's a lot of under an umbrella, and they've talked a lot about trying to rebrand, looking at the physical part of your facility, the building, what does it look like? People want to walk into and see a coffee shop. There's ideas like that will attract people. The partnerships with health clinics, such a big focus on health and wellness and exercise and staying healthy and diet and that kind of stuff. So those were some of the trends that I came across. And again, you get really excited to see a lot of trends, but a lot of centers are, in these really urban areas that might have more funding from cities and that kind of stuff. But lots of opportunities. And then who do we serve? And this is kind of those generations. And this is a struggle that, it's not a struggle, but it's a question that needs to be parsed out, because then it'll help us move in the right direction. Do we serve everybody? We're trying. We really are trying. From diverse backgrounds, we're really trying to do better to, incorporate more culture and to get more people of color coming to the center. And how do we do that to make sure that they feel welcome? And that includes the LGBTQ umbrella. There was a lot of information I found at senior centers really focusing on that population. Do we serve targeted older adults that can benefit from the services like case management, benefit counseling, that kind of stuff? We are lucky that Dane County and the city supplements our case management program. Outside of Dane County, it doesn't look like that. Folks in rural Wisconsin, even Milwaukee County, they have to go through the ADRC, Adult and Disability Resource Center, and the ADRC is designed to do short-term case management, and then they kind of let you go. But I think senior centers are realizing you can't do that. You need that continuity of care. People need to be followed. It's more cost effective. But do we put all our resources in there? And there was a point in time where there was a mayor that said, that's all you should be serving. That programs, fun programs, exercise, that should come from Parks and Rec. And you should be more of a social service model. So put your energies into that. So, I don't know. I'm not sure. And then, merging the older adults and the younger older adults and trying to offer enough variety of programs and services that meet everyone's needs. And so these are things that, I'm going to look towards the commission and figure out how are we going to move forward and where are we going to prioritize our resources, which is staff and money. So, in my mind, I'm looking at, we can increase our technology access. I think I mentioned we're on a list at DaneNet to get free computers that we can hopefully put into older adults' homes that can't get out to the senior center. Do we consider a senior center without walls? This is also a trend, our senior centers without walls, where you're doing programs at sites, you're doing programs at senior apartments, where you're doing programs at church basements. You've got yourself all over at different places within Fitchburg because people aren't coming to you. Do we go to them? Which I like that idea, but you need staff or volunteers to run those at different things. But those are models that are definitely out there and being considered more. The pop-up events, yes, absolutely, and that's kind of what the ambassador program out of the multicultural group is working on, where we're going to train older adults to be present at as many events as we can have a face at. 3, plan for building upgrades. You know, it's been what, 88 to 2012, what was that, 20 some years. You know, it took us to build an addition. Now it was 2012, so we're almost, what, 15 years, 13 years into the addition. And, you know, Dave and I sat down this week because we're running out of space. And I remember when this happened, when I was on board, and you're like, what do we do? What do we, you know, not tomorrow, but now is the time to think about this. What are we gonna do? Because you see staff, again, setting up tables, taking down tables, moving groups around. You're gonna be one of them, relocating because tax help is coming up. And that's a special event, but we are noticing now some double bookings or some overlaps, or, you know, how nice would it be to just have one room? You know, it's so nice to have a meeting room with 20 people. It's all set up where the friends meet. It's a nice classroom. But any place else where we have big events, we got to set up, take down, set up, take down, set up. So to have another room that has all the AV equipment that you can do big presentations or educational things. So anyway, I really want us to start thinking about what are we going to do in the future, because you saw the numbers. And who are we going to serve and how are we going to serve them? You know, so to me, you know, one upgrade that I had put in the CIP already was to remodel the kitchen. When we did the remodel in 2012, I really tried hard to get them to make that a commercial kitchen, because I knew we should have the ability to cook in there, but the funding wasn't there and the support wasn't behind it. But I did put in monies in the CIP for a commercial kitchen and for an upgrade in that kitchen, because, you know, we are serving a lot of meals right now, and you see it's crammed in there. There's no space. I'll have that data, but I know we served 2,000 more meals this year, or 2,500 more than last year. I think we're up to about 16,000. That's a lot. It's a lot of food going in and out, which leads to
that small kitchen.
Yeah, out of that small kitchen, right. Somewhere. Anyway, I'll get that data to you. But anyway, that's the only building upgrade that I had put in the CIP. Other upgrades would include just, you know, new tables and chairs, things like that. We're looking at AV. Janice, you'll be happy to know we met with somebody to look at AV for the dining room. We've got a good sound system, so we don't have to haul in that sound system.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, right. So we're getting a quote for that because we do have money in the budget, so we hope to get that up to speed. So anyway, lots of thoughts around what are we going to do with this building, who are we going to serve, how are we going to serve them. You know, City Hall has a plan. If the police department is built, the police will vacate the lower level. You know, there's just a lot of changes, so it's a really good time to look at what do we need for our older adults. 4, focus on the rebranding of the senior center. Janice and I have talked about this. This group, the planning for growth. I mean, I did a survey when I started, like back in, I swear to God, it was 1995, saying we need to change our name, and that was way back when. I've always thought that. The only thing that always hung it up was the social service part, because so many senior centers that don't offer social services might be called enrichment center, you know, community center for all, but we don't want to lose that piece of we have outreach workers and we have meals and we have services, because when families call from out of town, which they do, they know to call us because we have that. So, but to me, that's not enough to hold us back. So I want to think about
Your center meet that need. Why?
People don't like the name this new generation. They don't like the name senior center.
Younger or older.
They don't like the name senior center.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, and you're not alone.
I don't consider myself a senior. I mean, that's part of it.
5 years.
Yeah.
And I'm only at 68, but
How do you
at
know
63, I don't.
We've done surveys.
Okay.
We've
And
done
my
surveys.
I mean,
Janice, you have
the reality is this, and we've talked about this before, is that with the world now saying 55 and above, then that's one thing to think about. And the other thing is that there is an adverse impact, because even though we're trying to do a lot of different things for a lot of different people at various ages, people are saying, no, I'm not going there because that's the senior center.
Right.
And I think Barb and Linda did a survey about a year or so ago, and that came up in there. So there is a adverse impact of the name. But so I'm glad that this is coming up again, because I've got that on my list, that we really need to talk about that seriously. Where do we go with that? Because that is a trend nationwide, that they are doing something, getting rid of the term senior center. And if you think about it, you take a look at documents and conversations, they refer to more so, even Jill, as she's talking to older adults versus senior citizens. That's another thing that's going away. So those are some things that, yeah, we need to talk about seriously as to how it impacts us in Fitchburg at our facility.
And every time you rebrand something, you have to consider the educational component,
yeah.
the marketing component.
Absolutely.
It can be huge.
Huge. I don't.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But the payoff in the long run might be worth it.
Yeah.
It's no way little. You know, it's a big task.
Well,
But
I've
it's
been an
something that we
advocate,
have to do.
like I said, since probably 95. Like I just knew,
Yeah.
you know, which is why we created some of these groups like the Active Women's Group. You know, the Active Women's Group, they kind of are their own little senior center and a senior center, but they don't like the word senior center. You know, they had a speaker here yesterday that we have had here before, not that long ago, you know, maybe 2 years. The audience that I got was probably 15 people. The audience that they get is about 30. And it's because these women are very drawn to that name, Active Women's Group. But, you know, I'm fine with that, because those women are also our feeders to other programs. They wouldn't have walked in this door had we not had that word. There was a lot of talk about getting rid of the word active. Somebody did not like that. They thought it was being very exclusive. But I said, but that's not true, because we have so many passive programs for anybody too. So, you know, there's a lot of ways you can look at something like that. But if that's what's going to bring, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, but perception is real to the individual. In terms of your comment about people think that's not inclusive, using the word active. So it's a matter of opinion. And in reference to you saying the growth of that group, that's because, you know, bring a friend. That group has grown without a doubt. But that can happen in any of our programs, really. But
right.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead. That's okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. So lots of, you know, I love thinking about this stuff, but, you know, going to number 5 is develop stronger community partnerships, which to me is going to translate into funding, because the funding just, you know, what we need to do to grow, we're going to need a lot of money, I think, to sustain this long term. And so, you know, we do need more community partnerships, and I'm reaching out. I'm meeting with somebody from the UW Extension tomorrow. You know, we have the partnership with Edgewood, but there's a lot of health clinics that I'd like to have better partnerships where we could develop long-term programs or funding streams, and maybe those funding streams are related to sponsorships, you know, so their name is, you know, they're sponsoring big events or they're sponsoring our newsletter. I don't know. I want to be really creative. I want to be cognizant of, you know, having, whether it's grants or sponsors or partnerships that are going to be long-term, because you know, I want to be, I don't want the city to say, okay, you've gotten all this money from all of this, we're going to start to reduce your money, and then all of a sudden we're a nonprofit. But, you know, there's a balance, and we want to do a lot of other things that oftentimes don't feel like they might fit under a city budget. You know, that's just the facts. When you're looking at hard times, which I think is where we're at right now, we're going to have to be creative about how we fund some of these programs, but also too, building stronger community partnerships builds a better senior center, builds a better community. it builds a healthier community. So those are some things that I'm always thinking about too. But again, not getting stuck in, if we don't get this grant, if the Friends all of a sudden, aren't any longer, we can't rely on them. We have to think about the long term too. But again, I think there's a lot of opportunities to expand our programming through partnerships, where it's not taking all the staff time. Grant writing is, there's a grant, it's just ready to be had. I'm ready to write it, but grant writing takes a lot of time too. So figuring out how my role might change if we start to do more fundraising, more grant writing, building partnerships and stuff, taking me away from the center, which is what I should be doing. But then
grant
managing.
writing is very specialized.
What's that?
Grant writing
Right.
is very specialized.
Right.
It's not
And luckily,
something
we
you
have
just
somebody
do.
on the Friends that is very skillful. And I've run some CDBG grants in the past and Madison Community Foundation. But yeah, there's big grants out there too. So anyway, these are my thoughts right here. So I need your thoughts now.
Donald had his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Donald. Thank you.
We meet a lot of people like coming through council and stuff like that. And I know you said previously they haven't been, their representative hasn't been as active with this group. And I'm just wondering, how can I or share with council to connect you with more people? Is there a certain need or individuals we can help me? Because we come across so many individuals, especially like campaigning, and then also just through other various networks that we have.
Well, I think, and I'll say up front, and Janice will back me because I'm not a great networker, right, Janice?
I'm always on her case.
She's always on my case. Always on my case. I've been lucky to be able to get a lot of stuff done without, going out and about and hobnobbing. It's not one of my stronger skills. But Donald, I think that, as you have learned and know more about the senior center, that any time you come across somebody where you're like, that is a good partnership for the senior center. I think that our vision, the umbrella of services that we're offering, and hopefully, through the planning we're going to do, if any of these agencies is something that we can partner with to serve our older adults better, please just reach out to me, or say, I'm going to tell Jill about you, and then I'll reach out to them. Because, as I've learned over the years, like, I rarely do I say no to anything, because you just never know what opportunities come from that. Even if I know, I'm like, oh, that might not work, but you just never know, or who you're going to meet, or who knows who to be connected to somebody else. So does that make sense, Donald?
Yes, and then I had one other question for you. So with the grant writing and stuff like that, to probably make it easier on staff, do you all use or utilize the grant writing services that like the city has, or are those two entities completely separate?
I think they're completely separate.
Okay.
Because the city, that was, within all the strategic planning and work study, they talked about the city needs a grant writer. So, we each kind of do our own thing. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
But can you Jill, hook into that by any chance?
Look into what?
That grant writer, the city's grant writer.
Yeah.
No, we don't have one. We don't have one. Do we, Donald?
I know we don't have one,
Oh.
but the service that Donald was talking about, is there any way to connect with that?
I guess what I was getting at, we don't have a specific person whose role,
Right.
Like, the grant writer, it's like it varies by department, but I feel like we do have department people who do this kind of more regularly, and I was asking, like, can that be utilized, or that service be utilized, instead of always having you as the director or someone else who is stretched thin doing other things, trying to rush and get grants done?
Yeah, that's what I understood you to say. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're saying other city employees that are experienced grant writers?
Yeah, is that a possibility? I'm asking, I don't know.
I would, you know what, absolutely, it's not, I would suspect if I went to one of them and said, I can't, I've got my own stuff to do, I don't have time, but they can also offer advice, they can also offer, tips and that kind of stuff. And again, I know that we're really blessed to have Marshall on the Friends, who did a lot of HUD grants over the years and has done a lot of grant writing too. But absolutely, I'll look into that.
Jill, do our case managers ever go, do they have the bandwidth to be able to go into organizations in the community, businesses in the community, to educate just people on what to be looking out for as we get older? Do they do those types of things like brown bag lunches or anything to increase community partnerships?
No, I mean, we haven't recently. I think that is some of, what Janice and I have talked about. Is getting out there in the community. We used to do a lot more of that when they were less busy. We would go to neighborhood associations at night and do programs.
Okay.
We would go to the Lions Club. We would, what else did we do? We would, meet more. I used to do an apartment manager's breakfast every year. So I need to get back to that. I think, as life gets busy, you put that stuff on hold, but we need to circle back now. Because we're not doing enough educating the community. Because again, we're reaching a lot of people that can reach us, but we're not reaching enough people that don't know about us, and it's always been the issue. So.
You can also, just a suggestion, you can send out an email just saying, would anybody be interested, to some of your volunteers, would anybody be interested in co-producing or co-doing that breakfast or something? So maybe you can give them the information you had and they can actually do it. That would be something I'd be interested in doing.
I think that's a great idea.
Because that would take it off of you, but we can get back into doing that. And I like that idea of going to the offering them something so a group of people can learn who we are, what we do, and that, and they can take it back to their, in that case, tenants.
Yep.
So back in my Culver's days, I was on the board of an Alzheimer's group and brought in people from the association to come and speak to Culver's.
Yeah.
And that created a bond that resulted in Culver's establishing dementia-friendly restaurants. So
we did a dementia-friendly initiative years ago. I don't know if anyone was around when we did that. Yeah. And
We still have the stickers on the doors.
yeah, and we did all that. We did a lot of training of businesses and stuff. Yeah, so we need to get back to that a little bit. And again, with
So
You should talk to.
go ahead.
no, I just want to question, and I hear you, and that you guys have done a lot of things, but have we gone back and taken a look at, there's some kind of measurable process to what worked and which ones didn't, and because and go back and recreate some of this stuff. It sounds like you guys over the years have done a lot of stuff, but maybe we need to establish some benchmarks and the stuff that's good to keep and the stuff that not. But there's so many opportunities out there, and you guys have done so many good things. And as you talk about that breakfast, and you and I talked about having all the apartment managers over for like a networking kind of thing, and to get to know them better and for them to get to know us a lot better. But I hear you guys, and you've done some great things, but I think we need to take a look at what have we done in the past, what's worked and what hasn't, and then have a plan on where we want to go forward with.
No, I don't disagree. When I was looking at the history of the center and stuff and going through so much stuff, I remember I found another grant I wrote, and we started a program before even Dementia Friendly called SOAR, Supporting Older Adults at Risk. And that's where we were training all the neighborhood associations, and that was even before Dementia Friendly. I think it's a downside I've been here for so long, because I just tucked this stuff away, did that. But I agree, Janice, we need to get back to it. I don't know if I would be able to even say I can benchmark any of that stuff. Did it help? Yeah, the banks, I know we established some good relationships with banks when we did Dementia Friendly, because oftentimes that's where those tellers, but you don't even have hardly bank tellers anymore. The world has changed, but there's so much we can get back to, and that's why I get excited talking about this. And also too, seeing the dynamics and seeing the increase in the volunteers and those that are interested in in helping spread the word, because it can't just be me
Right.
or the caseworkers.
You need a volunteer 2.0 or 3.0, right?
Yeah, right.
Who can step up and
Right, but-
understand what the challenges are and what you offer, and
Right.
those people go into those communities or those
Exactly.
organizations and spread the
Right,
word.
yeah, so the more that, you know, and again, I think putting
Because
it under.
bandwidth is always gonna be an issue. for you.
Bandwidth is the issue, right, so, you know, the more of you that are trained under the ambassador program, and then maybe there's certain, you know, services that you're experts on, and those are the ones you're going to neighborhood associations or festivals or whatever, that we can kind of hone in some of those educational pieces that are critical if somebody's gonna go talk to a bank, or
Could you
callers or-
develop sort of just a list of all those opportunities?
Oh, sure.
And then, and then from there, you could go to recruiting who you need,
Yeah,
or envisioning where someone else could pick up that responsibility and be the point person.
absolutely.
And just go back through all those other programs perhaps, and, you know, and some of them, once you do that, you might see that there are duplicates or
Right.
that some that you don't need, or,
Yep.
or inspire something new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing, Jill, and you and I talked about this, we need to develop our story. What's our story? And I totally agree about the ambassadors. Quite frankly, any of us that's doing work, volunteers, whether they're on the board or not, we're all ambassadors. But we need to understand what's our story when we're out there.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about developing that story. We've got to have our own a story so that we're telling the same story when we're all out there.
Yep,
That's true.
I like that.
And oftentimes that includes a bit of a quantitative component. I think the qualitative is always is an essential part of that conversation, but that quantitative component, and are there metrics for investment or funding per capita over 60 for similarly situated centers? Like we do with our schools. Every school knows what their funding, what their budget is going to be per head. And I don't know that you have that I don't think we build that into our funding models. And perhaps, I mean, that would be progressive. If we could get locally or
My face, I'm like, what is she talking about?
If you didn't have to build your budget and beg for money, but rather we had 2,000 people over 60 at this point, and this year we have this number, and your funding should be that number, whatever times that number.
Even if we're not
That would be
touching them all?
slick.
Well, that's a good point. With I guess the correlation to K-12 funding might not be absolutely equitable or comparable, but somehow to recognize there is this group, and that the service to that group far exceeds perhaps what we did 30 years ago. A bit of entertainment, something to keep people busy. Today, that range of fundamental services is so different. That I think looking at funding, that it far exceeds this room. I mean, what I'm envisioning it, but if municipalities somehow embedded a process to recognize and then hold us accountable, like the K-12 system. If they're going to fund at X number, then they need to demonstrate success.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Janice, that kind of goes along with, you know, a lot of things we've talked about too, is measuring.
Yeah.
And me not having a good mechanism to measure everything, you know, is overwhelming. Again, you know, I can do case management and MA case management and outreach, because we're connected right to Dane County. We can measure meals because those programs, everybody right now is filling out a SAMS form, whether you eat once or 100 times this year. We've got your data in the system, but I don't have that for everybody that walks through the doors for every program and service.
And the people that never get here.
Yeah,
what their
but
needs
those,
are.
I mean, right, I mean, because you can see if I'm showing 5,700 older adults, people over 60, you know, we're not touching all those lives. And not that every, you know, 5,700 need to be touched, but there's a lot of people we're not serving. And we've got.
It might benefit.
That would benefit, I'm
Yeah.
convinced, but again, expanding those brown bag lunches and doing that outreach again. And so, it kind of goes back to you guys helping me create a manageable plan to get that outreach out there, to serve the ones that are coming through the doors, to, think about rebranding and building and that kind of stuff, because it's exciting. This is a great population, and there's so much wealth, and I'm not talking financial, but wealth that all of you bring to the table. And there's a lot of other folks out there that want to be a part of a good organization, and I think that we are, and we've grown it over the years. And there's so much we can do with people that want to help, that we can just do so much better. But just making a plan so I'm not spinning out of control like I normally do, because I get so excited about trying to do so much, and then it's not as good as it should be. So yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be all up to you.
Right.
There should be an
Right.
infrastructure there that
Right.
delivers the services.
Right. And
That's what I was thinking.
And having you guys though help me develop that infrastructure and prioritize,
Right.
Because there's a lot of, there's a lot of underserved, and there's a lot of, transportation is, obviously it's not on here because it's just such a given, and that's still gonna continue to impact us. We're gonna see, Jerry, we just, reached out to Marshall. I think we just ended up paying almost $200 in rides to get people to medical appointments that we couldn't help them get to, because RSVP, we couldn't get rides for those people. One was a wheelchair ride. So those needs are gonna increase, and I think some of those partnerships can help some of those services too, so yeah.
Yeah, Jill, also, and I'm glad you brought up increase of services. I was watching a program that was talking about seniors and older adults, should I say, in housing, and that it's becoming an epidemic, that we're homeless, older adults, so many older adults are becoming homeless. And nationwide,
They can't afford the rent. Housing.
Yeah, that's clearly. They're becoming homeless for several reasons. Not specific, but I'm sure that's obviously one of them. But my concern is, even though that's nationwide, and I know there's Dane County, that's happening everywhere, I just think that we need to be cognizant of that too, because when we talk about services and your social workers work with all that, perhaps taking a look at how do we connect and understand more resources out there, because that's going to hit us sooner or later as well. So that's just a topic that maybe something we could, as a group talk about and kind of prepare as we're talking about a lot of these other things that we need to start thinking about future-wise. And it may hit us sooner or later, maybe not as fast as others, but it's a reality out there about older adults.
Oh, we have somebody that, luckily he was a veteran, but he was getting evicted and had nowhere to go because he can't afford to pay. And I can't even go into all the details. It's one of Katie's clients, in trying to get the resources for him. And it wasn't until he actually, we were told he has to be homeless. He has to be homeless before he qualifies. But we had a gap, we had a bridge. Like, if we did this, this, and this, we can get him over here. Anyway, it was a long, hard story, and it's still going on.
Mm-hmm.
We hope he's not going to be homeless. We had another gentleman come in who's been renting a room for $300 in a home, and that he can no longer do that, and he's looking for housing. $300 for one. You can't even find an apartment for $1,000 anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a crisis, and it's a crisis here in Fitchburg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were saying
It's overwhelming.
It's an epidemic nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's gonna get worse.
So all I'm just saying is that it's coming our way, and so hopefully we can talk about this, and maybe there's other resources out there. And in fact, we only have 2.5 social workers there, so they can only do so much,
right,
in terms of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
I have a
So-
question for you all. With that being said, because that's one of the big things like we've been talking a lot about in council and just in Dane County as in general as housing. Are there specific things related to seniors or sorry, we're not saying that no more. What is it? Older adults? What was the term?
Yeah, older, whatever.
Yeah, it's older adults. Go ahead.
Older adults, okay. Older adults that would be pertinent to bring into those spaces and conversations, because I don't feel like we kind of touch on them if they fall into the maybe affordable income or low income like category, but overall, I feel like that's a demographic group that's not really talked about when we engage in these discussions around housing and things like that. So are there specifics that could be brought into those spaces from me serving on this and then coming and having the conversations and the council or committee of the whole meeting, or some of those conversations we're having with Mike Zimmerman when we're trying to strategize around Fitchburg as a whole?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can probably bring older adults in that are experiencing this. I can bring the social workers to a meeting to talk about what they're seeing.
That would be
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, also, well, it'll be interesting. In March, I've got Lorraine Gage,
Yeah.
our new housing person, coming to talk to the seniors at Lunch and Learn in March, and it's going to be more of a just sit down and let's talk, and versus talking at them. Want to hear what they've got to say about housing. So that's one way of getting some information there too. But I agree with you, Donald, on that. We need to bring them in, to hear what they have, what the older adults have to say. And Jill, you and I have talked about inviting Mike Zimmerman to our meetings to talk about.
Yep.
So it's a thing. It's an epidemic that's happening. So I just think we need to be prepared as well prepared as we possibly can be.
Yeah. And Donald, you and I can talk about some of those opportunities, and I can, figure out the best folks that can come and speak to their experiences.
Absolutely. And if you all could ever come to council and you want to share your opinions with us, it would be greatly appreciated, because the biggest, now I'm serious, like the biggest thing right now is Fitchburg grew expeditiously.
Yes.
And now, like, we need more diversity in types of housing. And that's the biggest thing that comes against council, because every time we have like maybe a structure, if it's not a single family home, there's always this pushback to everything that we're trying to build right now in the city. And we haven't found a good way to navigate that just yet. So if you could, and your voice is out there, you can share your voice in council, that would be very much appreciated.
Absolutely. I like that idea. Okay. Other comments?
The Cat Times had a cover story on evictions this week. I haven't read it all, but it would be quite apropos. I mean, it just came out yesterday. So.
Okay. And I know the county has put together some housing plans too, to just try to figure out what they're going to do.
Might have some detail on that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be good. Also, I'm sorry, I neglected to say this, although I spoke to Lorraine coming the first week in March, and then I have United Way, and their housing coming the second part of March. So that whole month is dedicated to talk about housing and resources for older adults.
That's great. And Donald, maybe that would be a good thing for you to come and attend too, to listen.
Yeah, come and join us.
Well, I'll shoot you those dates.
Okay.
Always good to plan ahead, but never lose sight of how far you've come.
Well, and I think that because I do, I'm like, but yeah, it's good. It's good to look back, and that's why I kind of did that, because there's just so much more to be done that you start to get overwhelmed. Like, what have we done these last, what have I, not I, but where did we come from? And we've come far.
You have.
And I'm proud of my staff and, what we've built. But there's just so much coming down, this baby boomer population, the economy. And again, then you're serving those that are most in need. But I'll tell you, there are people that have are financially well off but still need services. They need socialization. So I can't forget that, and sometimes I get so focused on attracting the baby boomers that I forget about the people that still want to play bingo and have a birthday party. So you're just, and again, just trying to balance all of that, all of these 5 focuses, and then adding, transportation, just, overriding all of it. Sometimes I do get a little overwhelmed. So having a plan and having the support of this commission helps.
Jill, on number 3, on the plan for building upgrades, what do you have in mind other than the kitchen and another big meeting room? What other things are you thinking of?
Well, pie in the sky. I don't know. I don't know if I could go through a whole freestanding building, but space for more exercising, an indoor walking track. More conferences room, meeting rooms for sure, all the presentations that you need, small meeting rooms and big meeting room, but a bigger gym.
Is it likely that this police station will be built? It seems
I think so.
Inevitable.
Yeah.
So will that include some sort of fitness training for the police that could be shared with the community?
I don't know about that.
Or alternatively, that space, would there be a way to, it's not really connected now, would there be a way to connect that space to the
police department?
Yeah.
Well, they are connected. They're downstairs.
Right,
Yeah.
but there's no throughway, is there?
Yeah, you just take the elevator down.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I guess, not from this floor. But I think, and I'm not sure, but I think that's why this conversation right now is good to have. Because if they're looking at, moving departments all over the place, what does that look like for us?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's good to think, again, working with the Friends, working with this commission, what are we needing? What are we seeing? And maybe the demand isn't super high right now, but I feel it coming. Just like I remember when we did the remodel in 2012, it was, I was saying, this is too much. I can't take down tables and we can't do the programs that we want to do. And, so now let's start to think about what happens in 5 years. What does the city, and again, what does the city want us to do?
And the 2012 expansion was new space? It wasn't, you didn't reconfigure something else to make it, or did you?
We reconfigured some of the offices down where I am and made that wellness room, which actually used to be a small meeting room or classroom. Otherwise, we gained the big, meeting room upstairs, which with chairs and everything, you could probably get 50 in there. And then 2 meeting rooms downstairs, plus the fireplace room, so that's really 3, plus a receptionist area. And then some of the other stuff was just remodeled, the kitchen and stuff like that, but yeah. So, a good time to talk about that. And then incorporate it with whatever, plans that the city might have for here, that just moving forward. There was a position put in, well, it got pulled out, but it was in the organizational study, which was a position that merged rec and senior, building a community center for all. It got pulled out of the referendum, but it doesn't matter because the referendum didn't pass. But, there's talk of that too. It's something I've talked about for a long time because, building community is all ages. And if we are sharing one space, we want to be able to use that space for all populations as best we can. Another trend that I didn't mention, is moving into night programs. There are older adults that are still working, or just looking at programming, kind of going back to this umbrella. I was looking at the Verona area school district calendar or whatever. They put out a pamphlet in their school district, and that is one of the things we don't have, which kind of works against us building community, but they have a whole enrichment program. And all these classes I was looking at in there, from cooking classes to, building little terrariums and planting to Zumba and that kind of stuff. Now, this is very separate from Verona Rec and Senior Center, but it's an enrichment center, and the classes were 50% off for older adults. And they were just so wonderful. And, I was thinking that I love that word enrichment. Anyway, I think that's a great word, but, how do we look at sometimes, doing more intergenerational where we can just open up a class that says, anybody 18 or older, bring your grandkids. I was just talking to the ukulele guy, Rick, and I said, what do you think about offering ukulele classes for kids during the summer? Because what a great intergenerational activity, and ukuleles are kind of cool right now. And how fun would that be, to coordinate more stuff like that? The other thing,
Jill,
go ahead, Janice.
Oh no, I think I think it's great. And I think the intergenerational stuff is great, but I also think that, and this is just my opinion, we need to really hone in on what we're doing with the older adults. For example, you just spoke to the fact that evening, having sessions in the evening and/or weekends, we're losing a lot of people, that older adults that would be coming to the center if they could come, if there was things going on after work or even on the weekend. You and I know we've talked to some people who said that over and over. And I think that's one of the things. Now, I understand staffing and, and workforce issues, but I think those are some of the things that I hope we hone in, instead of, and really hone in on older adults and providing services to them, whether that's expanding classes in the evening or the weekend or what have you. And then down the road, maybe look at more of the intergenerational thing. I think sometimes we're kind of all over the board, so to speak. And I don't say that in a negative way, but I just think we are sometimes.
And if you start thinking about night classes, then you got to start thinking more about transportation, because a lot of people don't want to drive at night.
If the target market.
But there are people that work.
Yeah,
I'm not speaking of older adults that need the transportation. Paul, the folks that we've been hearing from are people that work and have their own transportation, who are saying they would come to a class, after work. They would come on the weekends. They would do this, but we aren't open. At 4:00, we're done. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm just bringing this up. I think it's good that we're having these conversations. And I think we need to talk about some things that we kind of shy away from sometimes. But and another thing, I think we need to talk about benchmarking, and some of the things that we're doing going forward.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion, guys. And if we're going to have these conversations, I just want to have open conversations on it.
No, I completely appreciate that concept. I don't disagree, but I feel like there can be both. I feel like if we're going to look at more space, and we're going to look at, again, that's why I go back and forth with transportation, and Donald, you can chime in, but if the city is going to support anything, we can get more buy-in and more funding if that transportation is serving a broader population. I feel like we wouldn't have to not focus on seniors, if there was a merged thing. I mean, with the library, they have, staff for teens, they have staff for preschool, they have staff for young adults, and they have staff for older adults. So I feel like if indeed this was a concept that the city would look at, there would be managers for all these ages. But what it would do is it would open up some of these things where you're looking at multi-generations doing certain classes. It doesn't only have to be only seniors. That we would be using this space, because space is going to be an issue. If we start moving into nighttime, well, all of a sudden Rec's going to say, well, wait a minute, we've got these classrooms booked, we've got dance, we've got Zumba, we've got the Boy Scouts, we've got the Girl Scouts, the dining room. So if we're going to push, the concept of moving into the night and needing more space, I think it's something we need to consider, of having one resource that serves a lot of people. Same with transportation. But again, I like that we can have these open, honest conversations, because I think we can't move forward until you know, we kind of all just voice what we should do. And you know, Donald, this is, you know, it's something I've shared with, you know, administrators in the past too, but, you know, it has to be a vision that is taken on the umbrella of a city strategic plan or whatever, so we know how to move forward in a way that's going to serve the community the best.
Two thoughts.
Absolutely.
Or one, just to share an example of how a community was addressing expanding need. We were to the Stoughton Opera House in December for an event. It was on a Sunday evening, and when I called the Opera House in advance, I talked to an employee and she said, well, none of us are going to be there. The volunteers have the keys. And it was going to be a totally volunteer-driven, coordinated event, which is it's a different way of doing business. But my real question was, I should be aware of this, but I don't know. What does the city of Fitchburg fund for public health coverage initiatives, support? Do we have, the city has nothing for public health?
Can you give me
Well, like just a public health nurse or home visits or, well, nothing.
And I don't know many cities that do.
Is it all at the county level?
Yeah. I mean, like, if it's, you know, in Stoughton, where I live, they have a free health clinic, but that's their own nonprofit, you know. A wellness division, you know, I envisioned too, you know, which was driven by the shared social worker with the police department and the senior centers, you know, again, moving down, looking ahead, seeing government doing more social services. To me, that's a trend we're seeing.
Yeah.
So then where do you start and where do you stop with those things, you know? Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, without a school district,
right.
Because some of those things that Verona offers, MSCR offers the same things.
Yeah.
And they are all available throughout the greater metropolitan area.
Right.
And would you be duplicating something that, you know, maybe what would serve as well would be a sort of clearinghouse to direct people to those kinds of activities. And to concentrate on what you could offer here. Like the coffee shop idea, I mean, there are people that read the paper that come
there's
in
like
just
10 or 12 almost every day.
Just every day, and something that would be available all day long for people to gather as a social, maybe have a coffee cart set up in the summer on the patio or something. Because what people want is engagement and a way to connect and to be part of the community or to feel part of it. But it can't all be here. You can't have all.
Well, that's right.
What is it, 7,700 people total?
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, but that, Barb, that's a real good point about MSCR, and absolutely, you know, to be able to direct them to that, because they offer all those things. And that's what the center over on Williamson Street does. They actually direct people over to MSCR. It's amazing the things that you can get, you know, classes through them. But your point,
MATC to that, and I don't know what they're going to offer on this Park Street campus. You know, I haven't really looked into it. There got to be things close by that you don't have to do, but could still there could still be a connection, or they could register through. There could be a link on the senior center site or something to some of these other that would draw people here for information.
Right.
And once they know that you're a source for good information, they might find other things of value as well. I just think that you can't do everything. You just can't.
I guess that's
sure.
I guess that was my point. That was my point, Jill, is that we can't do everything. But there are options.
Go ahead, Donald.
No, I was just saying, I heard somebody say something about MATC. Well, I couldn't hear what the comment was.
Well, they offer a lot of classes as well that people can enroll in, enrichment type classes. For example, I have a friend who's taking an offset printing class. She's taken it for years there. She just keeps going back and back and back.
Right.
And I think it might be part of senior auditing. But, you know, there are Plato classes that meet here at Fitchburg and throughout the city, and there's senior auditing through UW. There's just so many opportunities.
Right.
And so you could have people that live in Fitchburg who would be interested in, you know, a Plato class.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the senior center has to offer it.
Well, that's where it goes back to the question, because all of those things we're talking about are people that are probably more affluent, that have transportation, that the MATC classes I looked into, they're expensive.
Yes.
Which is why I'm meeting with UW Extension. So again, those two different tracks, like we can be a clearinghouse, but those that don't have transportation, those that don't have, you know, the finances to do all that fun stuff, you know, do I focus the energy there? You know, how do I, because you know, I don't know. I mean, that's where I tend to focus my energy is building those connections here at the center, which is probably why I want to do everything and bring everybody here. But these satellite things too, because you know, I don't want to ship people off all over, because then we lose that sense of community and volunteerism. We dilute it a little bit, but there's got to be a happy medium, because I'm driving myself crazy trying to be everything to everybody.
But if people came through you to find some of these, you could encourage then your legacy fund to support people who can't afford it.
Right.
Good point.
You know, maybe
Good point.
you could get that far, but you know, it might be an educational thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Janice.
No, I was just saying that was a good point what Barbara was saying. That's all.
Hope we lost you.
So what is the next step forward?
Oh, tell me what I should do. No, I'm just kidding.
I like these 5 points. I think those are good focus areas to consider and maybe talk about those on a regular basis.
All right. I don't disagree. I mean, I need a plan. We need to make a plan. I need to prioritize. I mean, not that I can't do several at a time. So maybe I send this piece of paper to y'all and you start writing some ideas down, what you feel would be a priority. You know, what kind of engagement do we need from other people? You know, do we take one number and work on it, you know, at the next meeting? You know, how do we move forward? Janice, you got any thoughts?
No, well, not necessarily right now, but what I do think is that we brought up some some major topics that I think that at the very least we need to identify what those main topics are and have some, you know, deep dive discussions on it, and then make some decisions going forward. What do we do with it or not? But we do need a plan in general, because I think going through that we can do that over and over and over again. I think we need to identify what are the things that we find most pressing, that, you know, for the center going forward in the future, you know, the near future. And let's talk about that. I mean, because we covered a lot of different things today.
Right.
A lot of different things today. And we need to prioritize what. I mean, we did from the name, you know, changing the name of the center, to programming, to, you know, how do we refer to participants as seniors or older adults. I just think that we just need to prioritize what is it that we find that is pressing for our center at this time going forward over the next year or two or what have you. That's just, because we can have these conversations over and over. We need to lock in on some specifics and not try to do too much.
And teasing out what's short-term and what's long-term.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And that would be a gift
Yeah.
to the center if we can put something together. Because bless your heart, you will not continue serving at the center forever. So, I mean, truly, if that were the case, if we didn't have your voice, your advocacy and leadership, another person stepping in would just flounder. I mean, because you know it's drinking out of a fire hose. So to put together a sense of, and perhaps you already do this, but to have that sense of short-term 1-2 years and long-term visionary
Yeah, I like that.
growth kinds of things.
Okay.
And this is a great table of
I
people to
know.
help you
I know,
with that.
right. That makes sense. So if we come back in February talking about short-term, long-term.
On each one of these?
Yeah. And I'm gonna send you each a sheet of these so you guys can work off of it and how does that sound?
Sounds good.
And I think that would be good to focus, the discussion, just kind of, you'd have just go through each one of those in the status report, and it would be a way of focusing thought and keeping an eye on all of these areas.
And once a short-term and long-term plan has been developed for these, what happens next?
Right,
What do you do?
right. We need some action steps, right? Yeah. I mean, I'll create some.
Action steps, accountability levels, measurements, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this group will help me develop it. I'll come back to, and I welcome you to have ideas about action steps, but I'll come back with something under each one that I know I could, that makes sense to me. Doesn't mean they're right or wrong, but, and would ask you guys to come to the next meeting with some action ideas too for each of these. And priorities, like my priority might not be this group's priority, but I think we need to build a consensus towards the priorities. Okay? Make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you for a great discussion on that.
Jerry, report for the Senior Center Friends?
Okay, yeah, in December, we donated $615 to the general operations of the senior center. The travel committee is making preparations for opportunities for travel in 2026 already. The 2025 ones are pretty well locked down. And perhaps the greatest concern is that we've chosen a date for the pancake breakfast. It will be Sunday, April 27th. So mark your calendars, clear your schedules. That'll do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you need volunteers?
Yes, through Mandy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question. Why were you donating for general operations?
Oh, things that the budget doesn't include, like the newspaper, scholarships sometimes, although there weren't any this month, I don't think. Bingo
So that's
prizes.
a regular kind of.
Yeah.
I think that it's more like the fluff,
Okay.
not technically operational, but fluff.
Things
like
that
the
Jill
news-
can't put down in the budget.
Yeah, like the newspapers, bingo prizes, things like that. I mean, some of it can come out of our budget, but the biggest majority is the special needs fund. But you've got the ongoing fluff. That makes it special.
That helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jerry. Report from Jill.
So I just wanted to give you an update on the LTE position. The Friends had generously offered to pay 50% of the LTE position next year in 2025, and the city was going to pay the other 50%. And we were putting that position in at, I think, 24 hours. Without the referendum passing, I had a discussion with finance, and there were some concerns. So long story short, I went back to the Friends. I talked to Chris, who currently holds that position. We're going to reduce the hours to 20, and the Friends are going to pay for 70% of that position for 2025, and the city is going to pay for 30% using funds from, I'm gonna take some of our funds out of transportation, because we had $7,200 for transportation in 2024, which I didn't use. I think I used $100. And, I take responsibility for not using that money. I take responsibility for advocating for that money. But when push came to shove, two things happened. Our Friday late events, any late events, for some reason, Dane County Transit Solutions said, we have the hours, the funding to pick up these late pickups. So we never got a bill from them. Secondly, I had this grandiose idea of, we'll just move people all around the city. But all of a sudden, it just got too hard. We were gonna do, okay, maybe we just offer a new program and have people sign up. But then the bus was $95, and what if only 2 people signed up? And then we're spending $95 an hour to get them here and get them home. We did a few taxi rides to programs. Anyway, transportation is just a beast to manage. And so anyway, I'm using some of that transportation money, about $2,500, to help offset the cost of Chris's salary moving into 2025. So thank you to the Friends. The official vote, I think thank you, Donald. He's a co-sponsor on that amendment. It's a budget amendment that had to happen in January. So I think it comes up next Tuesday. Is that right, Donald?
Yes.
Okay. So Gabriella is the sponsor of the budget amendment. Donald is the co-sponsor. The mayor is supportive at this point, so they'll have a vote on the 14th. And I think we're gonna be okay.
How does Chris feel about going from 24 to 20?
She was perfectly fine. And we had a very open, honest conversation, and she was fine. Because it was a big jump from 15 to 24. And so
She was at 15.
She's at 15 now. So we're still getting an additional 5 hours. That won't actually kick in until March, because this won't officially, I don't even know. Does it come through in February, Donald? It gets referred out in January. It won't go to a final vote until February. So we can't up her hours until March. Yeah, that makes more sense. I was getting that mixed up with the furniture. So anyway, that's where that's at.
I'm sure she'd appreciate that.
Yes.
Anywhere that.
Yeah, so she'll be working her current 15 hours up until March 1st, and then she'll go to 20, contingent on this amendment passing in February.
And how much more is Mandy putting on her plate as a result of this?
Well, the days she's here, she's day to day in the kitchen, which is really nice. So Mandy can kind of step out. She's still in there more than I'd hope, but I think that first year was definitely a learning curve for all of us to have a new position. What do we do? I have to be real cognizant that position it's not a high-paying position. It's not a managerial position. So in my head, I'm creating all these jobs that we can shift to her, but really that's not what she's paid to do. You know what I mean? I don't want to give her more than what she's really paid to do, because I don't want to create an environment of like, well, that's not, that's Mandy's job still. I mean, some of the Dane County reporting, things that are more managerial. Mandy's still doing all the scheduling of volunteers, but having Chris in the kitchen when she's here to deal with drivers coming back, sometimes she's filling routes, she's ordering all the supplies now, and she's going to get trained on the SAMs, which is no longer SAMs, it's called Pure Place, the software where we have to put all the data in for each person.
What was the question about Mandy's productivity?
Yeah.
Oh.
And metrics around how her productivity has shifted now that we have Chris.
Yeah, we haven't measured it yet. We have some goals set forward for 2025, because again, as we talked about, like moving forward and trying to do more and using more ambassadors and expanding our program, we have to spend more time with volunteers and recruitment and that kind of stuff. So I do need some metrics. I have some in my head, but that will be very helpful as we move forward to then justify this position moving forward again. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any more questions on that? Okay. I talked about facility site, which is going to be very helpful with metrics of how many people are coming through the doors that we're not able to capture their names and stuff. Just an update on shared ride taxi. Adam, my direct report, deputy administrator, and I met with the city administrator for City of Beaver Dam right before the holidays and got some more information on shared ride taxi. As you know, we had Jana here from the Senior Center talk about how their Senior Center uses it. Beaver Dam has about 8 vehicles on the road. It's for everybody. We talked about, what's the time commitment, who writes the grants, what do the reports look like, and just a lot of good information we gathered from him. Adam and I haven't gotten together since it was right before the holidays, but so still exploring those options. We'll see, again, as you all know, that, we can bring all of this forward, but again, it has to go to the city for approval to write any grants to even implement a program. But it's good to get these details from an administrative point of view versus just operational. So I'll bring you up to speed next month on that. We were mentioned on WORT radio on Saturday. Somebody I was talking to, which was really nice. For some reason, they pulled us out to talk about our tax help, which is starting, and that's a big deal. Free tax help through AARP starts in Fridays in February and goes through March. So they mentioned that and another program. So they must have our newsletter. So I'm going to reach out to them because that's awesome that they pulled our information. Along with, I think they had another tax help situation they talked about. I didn't hear any other senior centers, but just reminds me of all these avenues that I can, move forward on and to do better marketing and stuff. So, but I thought that was nice. Otherwise, just trying to pull together numbers for 2024 and as we were doing today, move forward in 2025. And that's my report.
How was Ward talking about our tax help? Were they, no, but how were they talking about it?
They were literally reading our newsletter almost and saying the Fitchburg Senior Center has tax help available.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and then they bumped down to the next article. So it was clear they saw our newsletter.
Okay, but they were specifically mentioning that this was for Fitchburg. Okay.
Yeah, they were talking about Lucier Heritage Center offering tax help, and then they rolled right into Fitchburg.
Okay. I didn't know if we're marketing to the masses.
Oh, no, but I was not, yeah, they did say Fitchburg.
Okay.
I mean, technically, it is for anybody that walks in the door. Like, this is ARP's program.
You gotta be careful.
No, I mean, we're getting calls that this is a highly sought after program. Luckily, it's kind of throughout Dean County too, but they are just a wonderful service, so. And that is my report.
Any questions for Jill? Any other announcements? Our next meeting is February. I had the date and I didn't write it down.
To put that on there.
Let me check. It would be February 13th.
Okay.
I will not be at that meeting. I will be away and not available.
Okay.
We'll be in Zoom.
You'll be zooming in from Arizona.
Be a lonely crowd.
Zoom Gail will be here for that meeting.
Okay.
If not, I will.
Do we have a motion to adjourn, barring any other announcements?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all for a great
I'm
discussion
not sure we
today.
even have